pleased to present the National Weather Service and their Hydrologic program. We got Jennifer Bushur and Kevin Low, both been with the Weather Service. I didn't even know they did this. The Missouri Basin Forecast Center, which I guess you guys, you're responsible for all that rain, right?
We are. And it's big and pretty.
There we go. A weatherman finally admits the truth. Well, you guys are probably we have social to call you weatherman, right? You guys use your best guess. I think the weatherman is to roll the bones. Seems that way. Who we got first? Jennifer? And then after the presentation, we've got the Floodplain Simulator model up here, which I've seen part of it already. We've got the natural landscape of the sponge. They've got a parking lot. They've got a retention pond. They can show us. They actually have a levee that they will put up to keep part of the flood down the river. And we'll see that after the presentation.
Thank you, Larry. Well, on behalf of Jennifer and myself, I do appreciate the invite to come out and speak with you all tonight. As Larry said, Jennifer and I do work for the National Weather Service, but we are not meteorologists. Jennifer's background is geology, and my background is civil engineering. And I thought tonight that I would go over a little bit of what we do, because I don't know how many folks even know that river forecast centers even existed. How many folks knew that the Weather Service had river centers? Okay, roughly half. That's more than most audiences do. Then I thought I'd go over some of the stuff that we have that's accessible to you via the web. And then I'll go over what probably most of you want to talk about is last year's flood. And then I'll give you a glimpse of next year's flood. Good for business. All right, so overview of the Missouri Basin River Forecast. First of all, our mission statement. Everybody has a mission statement. But the Weather Service is basically here for the protection of life and property and the enhancement of the economy. So that's our purpose. Everyone knows the Weather Service forecasts the weather. So they forecast the flash floods, they forecast tomorrow's temperature, precip, but very few people realize that the Weather Service also forecasts rivers. But we do. In fact, we are the only agency that has congressional mandate authority to issue public forecasts on rivers. No one else has that authority. Although other people do that. All right, so why rivers? This goes back, I'm a history buff. But basically, the Weather Service was created by President Grant way back then. But really, when the Weather Service got into the river business, can be traced back to the Organic Act of 1890, which said that the Weather Service was to put out, or this weather agency, it wasn't called Weather Service back then, it was in the Department of War, and they were to put out flood signals, and they were to gauge the river. So that's where the Weather Service points to why and when we got into the water end of that. And of course, it transferred from the Department of War to the Department of Ag, but now we sit in the Department of Commerce. That's where we are. And we're no longer the Weather Bureau, we are the National Weather Service. That's just simple. Our office that Jennifer and I work in is in Pleasant Hill. Which everyone knows, I suppose. Just look for the big golf ball in the sky. Who are we, or what level are we? The National Weather Service is a line office of the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. And then they, of course, are an agency within the Department of Commerce. That's the cabinet level that we are under. There are 122 weather forecast offices, the folks who give you the warnings, tornado warnings, and how much rain it's going to be. There's 122 of those. They're based primarily on how far a radar can see. So that's basically, they're not based on political boundaries, they're based basically on what the radar can sense. The office that Jennifer and I work in, although we are co-located, we're in the same building as the Pleasant Hill Weather Office, we are one of only 13 such offices across the nation. And instead of being divvied up based on political boundaries or radar coverage, we are based on watershed. That's what we do. The Missouri Basin is the largest river forecast center as far as land mass, and also in terms of the number of people that work at our office, all 19 of us. I'll get into our modeling in just a bit. How do we produce a river forecast? But our model is set up based on something that some of you may have heard of, but it's the unit hydrograph theory. And basically, when you use that theory to translate precipitation into runoff, you have to break up your watershed into basins, sub-basins, little bitty components. And I just wanted to give you a glimpse of the finest, sort of like what the atom is, I guess. These are the lowest common denominator of our model is each one of these little basins. We cover 500,000 square miles, but each one of these little basins that we actually model and look at every day range in size. On average, they're about 300 square miles. That's as fine as we get. So we don't get down to minute little basins. We do go down to about 80 square miles. We've got a couple that are about that size. The Fort Peck local up in Montana is our biggest one. It's about 8,000 square miles. That's not good enough to put out a river forecast, but it is good enough to put out a volumetric forecast. But on average, we deal with pieces of land that's about 300 square miles. The Missouri watershed, again, is 500,000 square miles, as most of you probably know, but we have it broken up into 25 watersheds, 25 separate models, if you will. And each one of us, Jennifer, me, and about 15 other folks at the office every day, run a model in each one of these segments, each one of these watersheds. And then we throw them all together for St. Louis. We are sort of a hidden office, kind of behind the scenes. Most of our products, most of the things that we produce, are actually laundered through the local weather forecast office. So when we put out a forecast for the Milk River at Glasgow, it's put out by the Glasgow office. Or if we put out a forecast for Denver and South Platte, it's the Boulder office that actually puts out the cover. So we are kind of behind the scenes, and that's a good thing. We have 19 people in our office. Everybody has a different job, but except for the boss and the person that really runs the show, 17 of us actually do river forecasting every day. We have other jobs, but the first thing we do is make our river forecast. We have various backgrounds. About a third of us are civil engineers. About a third of us, maybe almost half, are meteorologists. And then a third or better, remaining folks are a smattering of a lot of different physical science degrees. So, for instance, Jennifer is a geologist, and we have 3 other geologists that I know of. And various backgrounds. We have one person that has a PhD, and a lot of folks with masters. We are not a 24-hour operation at the River Center. The weather forecast office is, but we are not, except when there's flooding. So in 2011, we were a 24-hour operation for a couple of months. We issue a lot of things, a lot of different products. We call them products, I don't know why. But a lot of things come from our office. Our bread and butter is the daily river forecast. We put out a daily river forecast for the Missouri River below Gavin's Point and for the Kansas River for its entire length, Junction City Dam. There's about 30 points between the Missouri and the Kansas that we issue every day, rain or shine, low flow, high flow, and just do it. And then we have about 500 other locations all across the basin that we will put out a forecast for. And when I say forecast, we'll put out 5 days of stage and possibly flow, what we expect the river to go to for the next 5 days, give or take, at 500 other locations, and the need arises when we suspect a low flood state. Oops. So that's these two things. We put out reservoir inflow forecasts for our federal partners, the Corps of Engineers, and the Bureau of Reclamation primarily. We also put out inflow forecasts for some private reservoirs as well, but you didn't hear that from me. But what a lot of organizations that operate the lakes, they don't have, we're the only agency that I know of that has a complete hydrologic model of every square inch of the Missouri Basin model. You can compute a volume off of that. And so agencies will look to us to help them determine how much water they can expect to be coming into their dams. Now they do their own modeling, but they often will look to us to help, to check what they're doing. Or in some cases, they leave it completely up to us. They simply don't have the modeling capability to determine it. Out west in the mountains, we also work with the Natural Resources Conservation Service, the RCS, to produce water supply forecasts. We also do something that is near and dear to folks here locally, and that's called flash flood guidance, and I'll get into that. We also put out 90-day probabilistic forecasts. So in addition to a 5-day deterministic forecast, the crest will get to X. We also put out a 3-month forecast that gives a probability of what the river's going to be. We also put out spring snowmelt outlooks, which basically in January and February, we try to come up with how bad it's going to be. And a few other things. We also do event-driven dam breaks. When there's a dam break, we're responsible for putting out what we think is going to happen downstream. So we are the agency that will put out that. Now, if a dam has an emergency action plan that's already been computed by the operating agency, how high it will get, we often would defer to that, the numbers. If there's no plan that's in place, we have about 16,000 dams in Missouri Basin that's been categorized, and usually those dams do break. We do have a few, 3 or 4 every year that break. We're the only ones that can get the number. So, what kind of data do you think we need to produce a river forecast? Precipitation, that's right, precipitation, okay. What else do you think we need? So we need to know how much it has rained or snowed. Runoff coefficient, okay? In our model, we have algorithms built in that determine, based on what we think the soil moisture is on any given day, how much of that rainfall will turn into runoff. So, yes, we need that modeling capability. Runoff coefficient. So what other kind of data do you think we need? So we need precipitation. That's right, exactly right. So that's what I'm trying to illustrate here. So we need precipitation. So in this segment here, I've got radar. Right here, this is a rain gauge, and this is a NOAA aircraft that's flying what's called a snow flight line. And it uses gamma radiation, not sure how. It beams down, beams back, and you can tell how deep the snow is and water content of it. So we need to know what precipitation is falling. And we also know, as the gentleman said, we also need to know what precipitation is expected. And in our forecast, we not only have what precipitation has already fallen and is hit the ground, we also use the next 24 hours of expected precipitation. That comes from another NOAA entity called the Hydrologic Prediction Center. They're located out east, and they produce these graphics for the next 5 days in 6-hour increments. So we need future precipitation. Okay, what else do you think we might need? Right, the current data. Right. So here's a tried and true snap gauge. We also rely on USGS. They have data collection platforms that automatically transmit the data. They collect it every 15 minutes, more or less, and transmit every so often. So we like these, but we'll take these as well. So we need to know what the river's doing right now. Then what else do we need to know? Okay, right. We need to know what the operating agencies are going to be releasing from the dam. We help them determine how much is coming in. They tell us what they're going to be releasing, both now and in the future. And also we have a lot of diversions. Out west especially, it's basically a plumbing situation out there. So we need to know how much is going in and coming back, or going out and coming back into the system. So that's the kind of data we need. We also need temperature. This is supposed to represent temperature. We also need that because we need to know how much of this is snow. And we also need to know how much that snow is going to be melted. All right, this is like a cartoon schematic of our model. We have a rainfall runoff model. It's called the Sacramento Soil Moisture Accounting Model. We call it word. Basically, it's a conceptual model that attempts to simulate the movement of water both over land and through the soil column. That's what it is. We don't deal with aquifers. We're dealing with just that flow that's going to eventually come off from the land. And we set up our own model. This is not handed to us. The framework is handed to us, just like a blank Excel spreadsheet will be handed to you. We've got to fill in the blanks. So not only do we do operations, which I would estimate that our operations are probably 25 to 30% of our job, and then 70% of our job is development work. Development work is to put the model together and keep verifying it, calibrating it, adding new stuff to it. So we develop our own models. And because snow was such a big thing this year, I wanted to illustrate that we do have a snow model that sits on top of our rainfall runoff model, or well, I should say our precipitation runoff model. We have a snow model that sits on top of it. It's called a temperature index model because temperature is the only thing that drives it. It has algorithms within it that attempts to simulate the heat exchange between the land and the snow and the air. And really, it's based primarily on temperature. Temperature is the driver. And the rest of these parameters comes to us through just experience and calibration.
Are you using daily data or precipitation?
Yes, we use hourly precipitation data. Our model is a 6-hour model, so we resolve that hourly in 6-hour chunks. But yes, we take data. Temperature data is, I think, every 6 hours. We use 6-hour averages for temperature. And then for river gauge data, we use every 6 hours. River gauge data. I think that's all right. They'll never know I think that's right. All right. So why are the 17 of us there? Because we've got a model. Can the model just run? And some would argue that. And some would argue that it might be better if we weren't there. But basically, we got this model that tries to simulate Mother Nature, and this is something that none of you can see. But the little yellow circles are supposed to be what the USGS is saying that the river gauge is doing. And the little blue line is what our model says it's doing. Well, we need to get the blue line and the yellow circles in agreement. And that's where Jennifer and I come in every day and do that. So then get that in agreement so that in the future we can predict the future response. And there's something like 20 some odd parameters that we can tweak on any given day to try to simulate, to try to adjust either the rainfall, because that's never right, or the soil moisture, because that's never right, or, like I say, 18 other parameters that we can twist and tweak in order to put out the forecast. And of course, the bread and butter is the deterministic forecast. The 5-day forecast is what we're there for. That's our primary objective. How many of y'all went to what we call the AHAP stage? But how many people have went to the river page to look at a hydrograph? Okay, a few of you have.
Not today.
What's that? Once a day?
Not today.
Oh, not today. Okay. I'll show you here in a minute the URL, but it's weather.water. No, it's water.weather. Water.weather. We also put out, like I said, probabilistic forecasts. It works well in snow. It doesn't work around here because of convection. The next 90 days, it doesn't work well. We also put out something called flashlight guidance. When you're watching a movie at home at night, and all of a sudden, across the bottom it says, the weather office in Pleasant Hill has issued a flash flood warning for blah, blah, blah. That's because they've been monitoring the rainfall, and they've been comparing it against how much rain we think this particular county or watershed give two different products. But basically, we give a guidance value for a 1 hour, 3 hour, and 6 hour storm. And the local weather office will compare how much rain they've gotten in 1 hour, in 6 hours, or in 3 hours, compares it against these values. This is 2.8, that's 2.3. Anyway, when they exceed those values, that's when they hit the button and say, okay, there's enough water in that county or that watershed for the streams to go out and bank. And this is something we issue twice a day for the entire 500,000 square miles. Okay, some of the stuff that you go to the web and look at. Daily observed precipitation. This is something that a lot of folks have grown to like. This is a relatively new. It was introduced in 2005, give or take. And what it is the as many as we look at precipitation every hour from all 22 Weather Forecast Office radars that we have within our area. We compare that to the rain gauge data that we have, and so we try to make that radar agree to the rain gauge where there is a rain gauge. Anyway, we quality control the radar. We've spliced our 21 weather forecast offices together. The other 11 continental river forecast centers do the same thing, and so what we wind up with is a 24-hour mosaic of quality controlled radar estimated rainfall amounts. And you can go to this website and pick that off. You can look at current data, which is today, or last 7 days, or last 14, 30, 60, or 90. You can also look archive. You can go back all the way back to 2005 for some areas. And look at any month and day and see how much it rained for that day. So some folks kind of like that. You can also look at normals. This is one way to look at a monthly normal from this site. You can compare what has happened to normal. So you can get the percent normal for a given month. For the GIS types, you can also download this kind of information as well. And there's a new, what I've been talking about is a 24-hour total. You can also do it with the 1 hour. This is a really new system, and I don't know how well it's been doing, but it is available in our now as well. You can also look at future precipitation. If you've got a cleanup plan or whatever, you can look for the next 5 days and get an idea of how much rain is going to happen. This was issued, when was this issued? Monday. This was Monday's, before it started raining here in Kansas City, and they did it pretty well. It's amazing. They had this peg, more or less, for a few days before this past week's event happened. Web page is, I've got a bookmark, I have no idea. Just Google HBC. HBC. And you can download that. I don't know why you would, but you can download that. You can also go to CPC and get longer range forecasts. These are not quantitative, these are qualitative. You can get what the guys at CPC believe will happen over the next 6 to 10 days, 8 to 14 days, 1 month, and 3 months. And I'll show you some of these products at the very end of my presentation around 10:30 and for next year. Snow data. There is a site, it's a NOAA site. We affectionately call it No Horsey. They prefer no risk, but I know them too well, so I call them No Horsey. You can get snow depth information and snow water equivalent information off the website. And snow depth departure from normal, that's sometimes helpful. Anyway, you get a whole wealth of snow information off this no risk site. Won't go into that. National Weather Service also puts out modeled soil moisture graphics. These do not come from the RFC, from the River Forecast Center. And I'm not for sure how much real data is used in the model. I'm not sure how this really is derived. We don't use it in our office operationally, but I do like to use it in briefings because it gets the point across when the weather dry. But anyway, Climate Prediction Center puts out some moisture there. Okay, something I know something about, river forecast. Go to wateroutweather.gov. When you do that, some of you have already done this, about half of you. You get a CONUS map of the continental U.S. with a bunch of dots on it that's useless. So you click somewhere in there, which you think you might be interested in, and then it brings you to the local weather forecast office map. Not that anyone knows about where weather forecast offices are, but you click on that, then you get a map of their area of responsibility and all the river locations that the National Weather Service has forecast responsibility for. And then you click on that, and you'll eventually get down to the hydrograph, where it shows you where the river has been, where you think the river will go, probabilistic information, more probabilistic information. Also, data about flood levels. What is flood stage at this location? What is major flood stage? Some historic information, some historic crests, some historic low flows, for those interested in that, and some impact information, like at 20 feet, the bridge over the River Kwai floods, or whatever. But something about the impacts, and a map. It shows you a Google Earth map of where the gauge is located. Also, some of the data behind the map, both in terms of observed as well as the forecast. If you're so inclined, you can ask for everything on this page. I understand some companies like to go in and harvest this information on a routine basis, especially the hydrograph information. And they incorporate it into some of their programs. So everything that's on this page, you can get XML code for. And also you can set up RSS feeds for your iPod or your PDA or whatever that will alert you when the river of your interest, when you sign up for it, and I believe it's free, gets that threshold and will send you a message. Downloadable GIS information. You can also get this information like on Google Earth interface if you want that as well. And then you can click on any of the locations that get you data behind it. Okay, probabilistic forecast. I'm not going to go into that much, except to say that the 90-day stuff that we do issue comes from the very same model that we use to make our deterministic forecast. What we're doing is we're running the period of record temperature. So for this site, if it has 30 years of precip and 30 years of temperature, we'll run those 30 years of precip and temperature and come up with 30 hydrographs, given today's soil moisture and snow water equivalent states. And then that will yield probabilistic distribution. We then do it for the whole period of record as well, just starting from year one. And the comparison of the two shows you whether or not we're relatively wet, dry, that sort of gives you an indication of the departure from normal for the next 90 days. Again, this works well out in the mountains. It doesn't work so well around here, especially during the summertime, because of actually. A lot of people ask us, well, when are you going to get probabilistic forecasts for the next 5 days? The Weather Service is about to, I would say we're within like 2 years of being able to do that. So just like when the Hurricane Center puts out a cone of pressure, and a cone of probabilities of where landfall is going to be made, someday, hopefully, that hydrograph will also give a spread of what we think we're going to get to in the near term. So we're hoping to get away from just yielding probabilities for the next 90 days and give you probabilities for the next 5. Yes?
What is the period of reference?
Well, it depends. A lot of our areas, when we calibrate a location, we like to have at least 10 years of record. But some of our locations, I would say we probably have, well, Bannister Road here in town, it has what? Since 18 something, I believe. It has like, or maybe that's not right, maybe 80 or 90 years of record. Yes, it's different from every site. Good question. Good question. In order to forecast well, we need to have more than 10 years of record. And someone other will be, okay. Flood of 2011. How am I doing up there on time?
Plenty of time.
All right. As long as there's beer and plenty of time. Okay.
Well, if she's not singing, you can keep talking.
All right. 2011, as you know, was a record-breaking year on many fronts. Provisionally, and this is just from my count, it's not from the USGS, but I believe that we set at least 20 new stage records within the basin. We had over 40 locations to experience major flooding. Major is defined by the Weather Service as significant evacuations of people or significant property damage. It's really a ride-down between the local weather office and the local public, emergency managers. They determine what major is. So we had 40 locations that went into major. Time span of the flood and the spatial extent of the flood were, to me, record-breaking as well. I'll get to it here in a minute. But we had flooding going all the way back to at least Valentine's Day, and we still have flooding today in South Dakota. So. And as you know, in Missouri itself just went below flood stage last month. So, quite a long time for this event. Our own office had 2,200 hours of overtime. And that's spread out among about 17 of us. We are not a 24-hour operation. We had 40 days. We went 24 hours. Another 60 days, we almost went 24 hours. We had between 2 and 4 hours gap at night. And I threw this in because we were on over 300 routine conference calls. These weren't just calls that came to the office one time. These were predetermined conference calls that we were a participant on. So between the months of February and July, we sat on an unbelievable number of calls where we gave decision support. Okay, the temporal extent. These are the locations, and these aren't all of them, but we had flooding in February due to ice jams at several locations. Missouri River up in Montana, Muscle which is a tributary, White River, Little Sioux, Blue, Flat River. So we had ice jam flooding and went all the way back to early to mid-February in some locations.
Is that normal? You get ice jams in February?
Yes, it is. I believe we had more this year though because we had higher flows going into the winter. So I think these were worse. In fact, this was a record year for any kind of flooding this White River near Noka, which I believe is where Jennifer's river, it set a new record this year because of ice jam.
What was the record it set?
Wow.
I mean, what are you saying, that the ice floes
Oh.
were bigger?
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you meant another.
No,
How high
no.
the river got. How high the river got.
So it's the highest it's ever been?
It's the highest it's ever been, right? Right. We're talking state.
10 years, or how long has it been?
Oh, and that is also a good question too. I don't know what this goes back to her question. I don't know how. That's a good question. I don't know how long this record is. It may not be very long. Maybe it's only 5 years or 10 years. But so I don't know. It's a good question though.
So that would kind of skew your information when you have a variety of.
Right. You are correct.
So when you talk about normal on some of those slides, normal is average of all your information, or how do you arrive at normal?
Okay, normal is different based on what you're looking at. On the rainfall plots, when we were comparing the rainfall map, those were 30-year normals. 30-year.
30-year accumulation data.
Right.
To come to normal, which was the median.
Right. Yeah.
Median or average?
Pardon?
Median or average?
I don't know.
That's significant.
I don't know. Then these are the records that were set. Again, we had over 20 records, so these aren't all of them. But I wanted to give you a spatial extent of where we had records set. And we had records set, everywhere. Montana, Wyoming, and of course, Missouri River there below Gavin's Point, and above Kansas City, we had 3 new records set there. And for different, like the White River, that was back in March. And then, of course, the latest ones were, we had a Stratford, James River Stratford did a new record in July, as did Wind River, Wyoming in July. So spatially as well as temporally, records were set throughout the basin, throughout the county. Okay, this I borrowed from USGS, and it may speak a little bit to the ice jam flooding that we had. But these are what we refer to as the flows before freeze up. So this was back in November of 2010, going into the winter, and we had much higher than normal. Again, I don't know what normal for these sites are. I would suspect they're based on the age record for the individual site. But the USGS has several that are over 90% in the upper plain and the northern plains, and some highlands there in eastern Montana. So what I'm going to go through the next few slides is why the 2011 occurred. That's the idea. So we had high stream flows going in. We had probably 10 to 15% above normal saturation of top 2 meters of soil based on this model data from CPC going into the event. And then fall precipitation. This is courtesy of one of the regional climate centers. But it shows between 150 and 175% of normal precip for North Dakota and Western Montana for the fall. And then this continued on. This is for the months of January through March. Was higher than normal. And then, of course, April, May, and June, especially May, continue to be wet. So high stream flows, high soil moisture going in, and then precipitation was above normal. This is the May percent of normal Again, this would be based on 30-year data. For eastern Montana, this is what most folks will point at and say this is what caused the Missouri flood. Well, actually, the whole system flood. Basically, this area received some of this area received 600% of what normal May precipitation is. May is normally a wet month, but this area received 600% of what we normally would receive in May. That's based on just a monthly comparison. This was something that one of the guys at the office put together. You can't read it, but what this shows is that some portions of the Yellowstone during those last 2 weeks of May received up to close to 80% of their annual precipitation in the last half of May. That says all of May, basically after the last half. Now most of these are about 60%. So we could in truth say that Yellowstone Basin and some of the Missouri River above Fort Peck Dam received about 60% of their annual total in a matter of a couple of weeks. And this was the turning point of the flood. It would have been a bad year anyway, but it wouldn't have been a historic year. At least as far as flooding goes, it did not contribute. Another factor that entered into the event of 2011 was the usually cold weather. This is in Celsius. The main thing is to say that the spring was colder than normal, and the cold weather lasted all the way into May. So what this would have, it would have the effect of allowing the snow accumulation to build up higher than usual, and also delay the onset of mountain snow melting. This is just a progression of the mountain snowpack, not the plains. We had a above average plains snowmelt, North Dakota, South Dakota. I don't have any numbers as far as how much above normal, but basically by May 1, we were looking at anywhere from 130 to 180, sometimes more than 200, but basically 130 to 180% of normal snowpack on May 1 in all of the headwaters of all the major tributaries, Yellowstone, Missouri above Fort Peck, and North and South Platte Basins. All of them had significantly higher than average snowpacks in May. We can't really look at June because June is usually a low average, so it sort of makes it worse than what it is. But going into May was the month that we had the big rain in eastern Montana. That was the start of itself. These are depictions of snow water equivalent for the 4 major tributaries. This is the Missouri above Fort Peck. Fort Peck being the first main stem dam, most upstream. The Yellowstone, the North and the South Platte Basin. What this shows is that this is courtesy of the Natural Resources Conservation Service, guys who run snowtail sites in the mountains. But the red line, you can see the red line, that's a normal build, a normal accumulation of snow water equivalent. And you can see that for the entire period, we were ahead of the curve, unfortunately, as far as the buildup of snow water equivalent. But what's important is the colder than normal temperatures allowed that snowpack to continue to increase and related on average about a month. Usually April 1 is onset of mountain snowmelt, and this year it was May 1. So that also, I believe, contributed to the significance of the volume of the 2011 event. It's also interesting, as one of the guys in the office, he's been there forever. He said, as we began to lose snow, he said, you know what? We're gonna go to zero on the same day. And by God, we did. Mother Nature was slow and high for the peak, but she was within a week, I would say, of going to zero snow water equivalent in most snowtell sites. When she was done, she was done. Yes, sir.
Well, it looks like you've done your work statistically here. Do you see some things happen? What happened to the people with or elsewhere that saw this data?
Well, I mean, I'm looking at it in hindsight. I think it was the May event, the May rainfall event. If anyone is to be blamed, it would be whoever said that. I was about to say National Weather Service, but who else would even have any idea of what could have happened? Even the Weather Service could not forecast a year's worth of rain in 2 weeks. So I think that was the straw that broke the camel's back. So I guess
But you knew you were in trouble without the rain.
well, I believe the Corps made adjustments going into May. Even April, I think they were making adjustments. But I would have to defer to them to answer, how they looked at the data and what they did. I will add to that beginning probably about the 18th of May, we were on the phone with the folks in Omaha that were running the 6 main stem dams. And we were on the phone with them on a daily call every day until sometime in July. And so we kind of sat there, maybe not in the hot seat with them, but we sat there and listened to what their decisions were, and we gave the best support we could to them, what we were saying. And so I tip my hat to the Corps of Engineers. They were under unprecedented conditions, and so I think they did a fine job.
So you can't predict this, but your department collects the information, so we have an abnormality here. I'm trying to think of the overtime. What did you guys do differently that required overtime if all you do is report the information as it happens?
Well, we don't report the information, we create the information. We take Mother Nature's information, rainfall, snow melt, temperature, and then we attempt to put out a projection of how much flow or how high, or both really, the river's going to do over the next 5 days, the next 90 days. So we're producing forecasts around the clock. So that's why we were there around the clock. So we put out projections of what the river's going to do.
The situation as it was unfolding.
As it was unfolding, right. So every forecast was wrong the minute I hit the button to submit it. It was already out of date. And then you do it again. Good question.
I just wanted to say, it
Yes.
seems like a good time to say this. I mean, a lot of us in this room were watching extremely closely during that time. And, I mean, I can totally, all I was thinking about while that was going on was, my God, these people are not sleeping. Because it was changing several times a day there, especially towards the end of May. It was amazing to me. I can't thank you enough for the information that you guys were putting out. I realized it was a constantly evolving situation. And there was obviously many different organizations working on making that happen. But it's so helpful to people to have what you guys do.
Well, thank you very much. That's good to hear. So some takeaway, well, maybe not takeaways, but some points that NOAA, not just our office, but our headquarters kind of put together. So the 12 months leading into the event was among the top 3 wettest 12-month periods since 1901. I didn't come up with this, someone else did. So the lead-in was among the top 3 wettest. Each individual month was wetter than normal leading into the event. The spring was unusually cold, which affected the melt when the melt came off. May 2011 was the 2nd wettest on record. And not me, I'm just a civil engineer, but climatologists who work for NOAA point the finger at this thing called the La Nina signal as being a factor, a significant factor in what happened in 2011. Okay, so with that said, let's look ahead to where we are today. In fact, I've already, Weather Service has already spent the last 2 weeks coordinating when we will start putting out next year's outlooks, spring flood outlooks, and what the national headquarters wants us to do and so forth. So we're already planning as to what we will do next year. And why is that? Well, the only bright spot in all of this is something I yanked a couple of days ago. Unlike 2010 and 2011, at least we're going in with hopefully some drier soil moisture. So that may help us. I suspect last year when we went in with saturated soils, something called frozen ground comes into play. That may have increased our runoff. So maybe if the soil is not saturated, we go into freeze. That might help us. But we still have higher than normal stream flows in the northern plains and in the Wyoming and Montana. So now some of that may be because we've still got high releases out of the reservoir. All the main stem reservoirs, with the exception of Fort Randall, still has flood control storage impounded. They intend to get that out, but we still have flood control impounded. Most of the Bureau of Reclamation lakes are now below conservation. That's but anyway, we have high stream flows and hopefully drier soil conditions. 3 weeks ago, Climate Prediction Center put out the 2011-12 winter outlook, and basically they said that we are going to get another La Nina year. And what that means is wetter and colder. So it's just like the same setup as far as global climate goes, same setup that we had last year. Now, that doesn't mean we'll have last year again. It's just that the climate is favorable toward setting the stage. We still have to have the weather. So these are just some graphics that went along with that October 20 release. So again, these are for the months of December, January, and February. Cooler in those areas that produce the snow. And this is the same stuff, but this is the next 3 months, and it's not much better. But this is, this is what, 5 months in the future. So take this with some thought. But anyway, CBC does believe we're in for a colder and wetter winter and spring. So, there. So we looked at NOAA's hydrologic program, which most people don't know a whole lot about. We looked at some of what you can go to the web and find if you know the URL. We looked at the 2011 flood, and we looked a little bit at maybe what happened. So with that, I'll entertain any questions, and I do thank you for your attention. Oh, and before I completely close, if you do have time to swill another beer, you come up and we'll demonstrate. We have something that we got about a year ago. A lot of weather offices have procured these. And basically, this is a floodplain model, a physical model, of course, that we take to elementary schools. Cub Scouts come to our office sometimes. We'll present that. So if you'd like to come go through what we do, we're more than happy to stay as long as you want. Thank you very much.